Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this evening as we host a hearing on the 2021 school calendar. As a reminder to all, this calendar was originally voted on this past spring, and the purpose of this evening's hearing is to meet the state law requiring all public school districts to allow for public comment to be on their school calendar. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to discuss a delayed start to the school year. Comments made during this hearing will be limited to the school calendar itself. We understand that there are a lot of unanswered questions related to how we will begin the school year and what that looks like. As a parent of a West Clermont student myself, I too have many unanswered questions and feel your frustration. I assure you, our Superintendent, Mrs. Adams, along with the support of her entire administrative team, are working endlessly to find answers to everyone's questions and ensure there are no obvious gaps or holes in the process. We will be conducting our regular board meeting immediately following this hearing and hope to share information that will answer some of your questions. Since we voted in the spring to suspend public comment during our meetings, we will not be entertaining public comment during our regular board meeting this evening. As President and Vice President of your West Clermont School Board of Education, joining you here from the board office, we very much look forward to the governor lightening up on the restrictions for hosting an in-person board meeting and life getting back to somewhat normal. I'll turn the hearing now over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you, President Brinkman. Good evening, Vice President Mr. Rudy, Superintendent Adams, Treasurer Kelly Sinninger, and the rest of the board. I'm going to present this evening on the proposed changes to the school calendar. As President Brinkman alluded to, the majority of these changes is in regards to moving the start date back. Let's first talk about the why. The idea behind the idea to change the start date and move it back for the students is to provide time for teachers and staff to prepare for the three-phase plan. In addition to that, to help the staff to prepare and understand the Stop the Spread protocols, which we've been working on and publishing, and also allow extra time for the staff to settle in, prepare their rooms, their furniture, etc., for the new way of the way teaching and learning will take place. These changes were primarily to the start of the school for students. Previously, it was August 25th with a staggered start. The new proposed calendar has a start date of August 31st, again with a staggered start. Throughout the year, there are additional professional development, professional learning days for staff, and those days will be scheduled remote learning days for students. Those are highlighted throughout the calendar presented in blue. Again, these extra days are to allow the staff to receive professional learning and development to help continue the success of the learning in this new environment, and the remote learning curriculum that will be prepared for students, since it is spaced out, will be well planned and thought out. One last primary change I'd like to highlight is there was only one change to spring break from the previous approved school calendar. That change was an additional day off under the new proposal. The spring break, as approved previously, with no change for the presented. And then the final note, which I'm sure all students are paying attention to, is that the final day for students in the new proposed calendar does not change as well. So trying to give a broad overview of the rationale behind and some key changes to the proposed calendar and the thoughts behind. Any questions at this time? At this point in time, we do not have any any public that have arrived for the opportunity to provide feedback inside the allotted time, just highlighting that. Under the proposed calendar and the additional remote learning days, it does comply with all of the necessary requirements from the state. There's no concern there.
So, Mrs. Adams, considering that we don't have anybody here for public comment, how long do we need to leave this hearing open?
I think we could go until 7:10. We did get started a few minutes late, and we had allotted about 15 minutes. So it's 7:07 now. So I say a few more minutes. I do have people in the parking lot, and I'm not getting any word that people are trying to make their way in. So I'm not sure anybody will be present.
Thank you.
So how about those Reds?
I am getting word from the parking lot that nobody's out there ready to come in. So.
I choose not to comment on the Reds.
Thank you. At this time, this concludes the hearing for public comment in regards to the proposed changes to the calendar. So at this time, I'd like to turn this back over to President Brinkman.
Thank you. We are going to take a brief recess of about 2 minutes and then come back live for our regular scheduled board meeting in about 2 minutes. Thank you.
Very good.
All right. Beginning our regular scheduled board meeting this evening. Roll call, Mrs. Sininger.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Present.
Mr. Rudy,
Present.
Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
And justice for all.
Mrs. Adams, Superintendent Business.
Yes, let's begin with item 2.01, the revised school calendar. We just completed our hearing, and I have to say we hadn't gotten any feedback from anybody until about, I don't know, just an hour ago, where we noticed a problem that I want to course correct here as we are, before we get started. It's a minor detail. It's not about the start date or anything, but we realized that we had scheduled a remote learning date on the same date as homecoming. And, you know, one of the thrills of being in high school is that homecoming week and all the festivities that are associated with that. And so we don't want to create just an hour ago where so what we want to do is move that to October 2nd instead of October 9th. And that's the minor change that we are requesting today. So you've heard any and all comment, which was nil, related to the district calendar. And so that I ask that you accept this revised calendar and approve it with the one change I just mentioned, that there would be an additional remote learning day in there that is scheduled for October 2nd instead of October 9th.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, and a second by Mr. Chumley. Discussion by the board. Hearing none, roll call. Mrs. Sininger?
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you, board, very much. One of the challenges that comes with the calendar for the school year, and the reason why you see more remote learning and professional learning days incorporated into the calendar, is the fact that we do not foresee our ability to pull teachers out of the classroom and provide subs for them. We know heading into the school year, as unique as it is, that practice is just going to need to stop for this school year. So I won't say it won't happen ever, absolutely ever, but for the most part, it's our plan to practice having professional days only on the days where the kids won't physically be with us, so that teacher is face-to-face with the student every day. And I think that will have certainly some advantages, but it does increase the amount of time that we are separated throughout the year. So thank you. Moving on to item 2.02, I'm asking that you approve a resolution to amend the administrative salary schedule. We just brought it to the board last month, but we were able to, through a resignation, we're able to reimagine a position in our district office that we think will be beneficial to our team. And so we are adding a secondary special education and pre-K-12 student services director. And so we've just added that to the salary schedule at the same range that it was at before. This has just been renamed and repackaged a bit. And so we ask that you approve that as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney, discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And, I'm just catching myself as Dr. Foltz is not here to keep me on my toes. I just started to think that I'm not sure that you guys have approved the official resignation yet. It's something that's in the works and in progress, that just our board meeting time hasn't caught up with the actual finality of that. So stay tuned. At our August 3rd meeting, you will see a resignation and then a new hire. Okay, so up next, item 2.03 is the presentation of the return to school plan. And we'll be asking you at the end of that to pass a resolution to accept our plan. I first of all just want to really thank the administrative team. In a school from June to August, there's this kind of gap time in a school system where it's a very lean crew, and our administrators have been very dedicated during that time, taking in new information, trying to stay connected with our staff and with our students, families, to really understand their needs and their desires. And so I just appreciate their hard work and ability to adapt and pivot and change as necessary. And I am grateful that we've had just huge response. Anytime I've sent something out to families, we've gotten a really good return rate, some of the highest numbers ever. And so clearly people are engaged and caring about this and want to have their voice heard. And so we truly appreciate it because it helped us with our decision making. And I also I want to say I'm just very grateful. Every time I've returned a phone call, answered an email, or listened to anybody, or talked to our staff yesterday on a Zoom call, I have to say that people are being so incredibly empathetic, so respectful. And although the anxiety is there and the questions are there, they're just doing it in such a caring way. And I have to just comment on it because I appreciate it so much. It's so easy to get frustrated, and I have my highs and lows on this topic, and can be on a roller coaster in myself. But just the fact that when people are asking questions and being interested, that they really are asking good questions and they're coming from a good place, and they are also saying in there, and we understand this is so hard, we're frustrated, or we need help, and I just appreciate that, because that truly makes me feel like I have a community working with me through this, as much as misinformation or missing information is hard. And I just appreciate the patience. Today, I was able to listen to a webinar that was provided by our legal firm that featured a superintendent in Tennessee who has started school about 2.5 weeks ago. And so it was just very encouraging for me to hear a superintendent who's already walked the path that we're getting ready to walk. She was very insightful and inspirational, actually. And she talked about on that first day of school just how everyone had their mask on, but you could just still feel the smiles exuding out of those masks. You saw the tears falling from the teachers' eyes as they were reconnected with their students. And so I think it's just a wonderful image and something that I am looking forward to as much as the challenges are here. And I know that their school district is a lot smaller than ours. And so, but it is good to be able to connect with leaders I've connected with leaders internationally this summer, as well as within the United States. And it's it's helpful to know that there are some people who have who are walking this path. We're in this together and just learning and doing everything we can to ensure a safe and successful return for our students. Larry, you can go ahead and switch it. I told the staff yesterday when I was meeting with them that I know that they're looking to me for answers, and they're looking to for me to have it all lined out and just roll out the plan. And I understand that. And I want to be that leader for everyone. And I want to have that information and have that expertise. And I will say, and when I'm on calls, I'm looking for the health professionals and the government officials, and I'm looking for the state. And I'm hoping that they have a magic answer. And what I'm finding time and time and time again is this is such a novel experience and situation for everyone in every industry and every walk of life. And so the best people can say is, this is what we know right now. And so that's how I'm going to start tonight, is this is what I know right now. And we spend every day, every minute researching, digging in, listening, and preparing plans to take care of our students and staff. And we are committed to continuing doing that. And so again, I want to just thank everybody for their respectful ways that they've been interacting with us, and for the grace and patience that you have shown us. And so now I'm pleased to be able to present our work and our progress to this point, and wanted to begin with our working assumptions. I think it's important to note that we all understand that we do not believe there will be a vaccine for coronavirus before the school year is beginning. And so we are working under that assumption. The biggest tension and the biggest challenge in all of this is the fact that when you focus on one health crisis, the coronavirus, the disease or virus that spreads in more efficient ways than any virus that's out there, you're trading one healthcare concern in our world for another one, and that is students not being in schools with their teachers. And there's just such a tension there. It's so polarizing. People are all over the place. And so as a superintendent, you really feel like you can't, you're never going to make all people happy. And we know that when we go into decision making, but this is one of those more difficult decision making opportunities to be in. And it feels like a no-win situation at times. And so that's why I just want to commit to you to continue to provide information and share things as we know it. With this pandemic, there's this sense, and even Mrs. Brinkman, she started the meeting with it. We can't wait just to be able to get back to a regular board meeting where there's people and we're in the same space together, and just this sense of normalcy. We are all craving that. But what I want to be really clear about is this school year, our students are going to come back, our teachers are going to come back, our staff is going to come back, and school as we know it is not going to be the same. And I don't want to give a false hope that it is. We are going to be operationally different, and we're going to be educationally different. And some of those things are going to be really challenging. And some of those things are going to be welcome changes and wonderful news and maybe a silver lining in some of this pandemic that we've had to deal with. This is a kind of a commitment that I need to make, and a pact I need to make with you as parents out there, to say that we as West Clermont, as a school district, need to be responsive and build responsible plans. And this is all about the health and safety of our students, and we're going to partner in that. But to not be surprised by the fact as parents that these guidelines could likely change throughout the year. And our need to pivot in between plans needs to be something that's important to all of us, and something that we're on the ready for. I'm not saying it's easy by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but it has to be something that we are all ready for. During the spring, it came out of the sky and hit us like a brick. We didn't know what was happening. And so we were really measured in our take a deep breath, slow down, and let's take care of basic needs first and then move along. And this year we need to be able to pivot way more quickly. And there won't be the revving up and the revving down. It'll be, we need to shift. And so preparing for that is something we're all going to have to learn how to do together. And finally, I want to mention the financial impact. As you know, we worked really hard, and you worked with us, sharing the information, sharing the facts, and getting the story of West Clermont told out there to our community and to other stakeholders. And we passed a levy that really committed to maintaining our programs and services. And that's what we were committed to doing. And I will just tell you that there is no doubt in my mind, with the challenges of COVID and the response that we have to put in place, that's certainly at risk. There are certainly questions there, because we are having to really look at everything from a safety standpoint and a financial standpoint. And sometimes there are tensions there that pose extra challenges for a district that is very resource lean and efficient. And so I just want to keep that in mind as we think through, because we're always weighing it all out and prioritizing. And finally, and I said this a little bit in my opening, we are better together. I can't thank the staff, the parents. I mean, today I got an email from a parent that said, you know, we want to fully stand behind you and support you and getting kids back to school. What can we do? And that's the first kind of parent email that I've gotten like that. And so that was just an incredible and perfect timing for me, actually, before this presentation, to see that. That sense of we're in this together and we have to bind together as a learning community, as a larger community. That's the only way we're going to get our kids back safely. And so we're better together. And I fully believe that. And I'm really beginning, as I've been able to connect more and more over the last 2 weeks with families, I'm feeling it across the board, and that feels good. What we've been working on since you heard from us at late June, so this is all we've been doing in July. We worked really hard with our core administrative team. It's about 40 of us that are working hard to build plans in June. And we kind of had some of those administrators leave for the summer, still not having the governor's plan in our hands. And so that was very frustrating. So we worked as hard as we could to get it up to the finish line. And then we were layered on with the new governor plans. And so we worked through those for like the first week or so of July. And then just this past week, there's been another layer of CDC requirements that have come in. And those kind of came out of nowhere. We weren't anticipating those in the way that we were the governor's plans. And so it's been a build plans, research, listen, learn from every place we can, and then update our plans, revise, change. And it's a very tedious process that we've been working through. So we lean heavily on the American Academy of Pediatrics report. They have a lot of thoughtful research and just really compelling educators to really think about the challenge of the public health crisis of, you know, not being in school could be as significant for students as the virus itself. And I know that it's hard for me just to say that and fully understand like the heaviness of that and how we're all torn inside, but that's what we're hearing from our American Pediatrics Association. The public health documents, the Center for Disease Control, it's mounds and mounds and links upon links on the internet that we are still pouring over to shore up with our plans. And we're working very closely with the Clermont County Health Department. And I have to say that team has just been absolutely wonderful to work with all summer. And we know we'll be great partners in the future. As school districts across the state started revealing their plans, one of the things that emerged is a hybrid plan and what we're calling a 50% capacity plan, where half the students are in session certain days and some are not. And we always thought as an administrative team that would be a very heavy lift for our families, knowing the burden that it would bring and it would be challenging. And so we didn't pour a ton of our effort in June thinking through every one of those details. But as time went on, I was really starting to hear from people that they're like, well, why can't we have one of those 50% plans? And so what we did in July is we tested that to say, staff, parents, is this something that you're interested in us taking a really serious look at and developing? You know, what are your thoughts on that? And so we did get a return on that. And I'll explain those details a little bit later. We also have been working hard on the West Clermont AllIn Academy, the WCOA. And that has been more of a research effort and a recruitment effort so that we can get a strong curriculum base in place and that we can understand who might want to help facilitate that, who might want to lead that. And I will say, I don't think any school system can just whip up a program in a matter of 3 weeks or 4 weeks and do it to the best of their ability. And that's kind of what we're doing here. We are on a very tight budget, on a very tight skeletal crew, are trying to be responsive to what our community is asking for. And when we surveyed, we heard loud and clearly that at least 15% of the survey participants were interested in a full online we don't want to come back to school for whatever reason option. And so we've been committed to it, but I can't say to you that that's just, let me hit my easy button and no worries there. I mean, there are huge challenges for it. And I know I even saw a comment on Facebook of they're holding information from us and they don't want us to know, and they're keeping things from us. And that really couldn't be further from the truth. We are working on this in a very lean fashion, working as quickly as we can, because we want to deliver a good product. We want to deliver a service that is going to be meaningful for our students. And so we don't want to do that casually. So we're being thoughtful and measured, and we are sharing things with you as we know them. And I know it's it's kind of a chicken or an egg a little bit, is where you're like, we're saying, please sign up. And then you're like, well, what am I signing up for? And that's like confusing to people. But we have to know like how many people might be interested so we can know how the staffing works. And so there's just a lot of tensions and challenges in trying to start up kind of a startup here right in the middle of our school system. And again, I know some of you are signing that up for that with blind faith, and we appreciate it, and we are going to deliver on this. We are being very mindful, but I just want to be clear that it is quite challenging. And then finally, communication. We feel that communication, you can live and die on communication and building that trust with your community. And so we've been working hard to stick to our rhythm, not overwhelm. We're trying not to survey you to and fatigue you on that, but we really want to hear from you, and we appreciate that two-way communication. And so we're committed to that, and sometimes we're slower than we even want to be, but we want to make sure that we're correct so that we're not dialing back and being confusing. To be honest, we're getting to the point with most all of our documents that not only are we date stamping it, we're time stamping it, because things are changing at that kind of rate. And so I don't share all these behind the scene details to make you feel sorry for us or just for any other reason other than to say that the work that we're doing is extremely challenging in the time of year that we're trying to do it. And we just appreciate your patience and your understanding and our interest in really answering all your questions. And so we're committed to that. So to keep us rolling here, I've shared since June with the board, I've shared that we are driven by our values and our guiding principles. And so Larry, if we could just go ahead and move it along, just reminding everybody that in West Clermont, we're on the rise. And as challenging as any moment like this is, we are wolves and we are strong. And we are the kind of people that are going to dig in, and we're going to work hard to do what's best for kids. We're not going to be perfect. We're not going to even try to pretend that we're perfect. But we are committed, and we want to see those relationships that we're able to have with our students to be rekindled and re-energized. We want to be able to be innovative in our approaches and how we tackle these challenging situations. We want to be all about students, being student-centered, so that the learning that they experience is all about them. This is not a one-size-fits-all, and more than ever, it's going to be important for us to know each kid very well, hear their voice, and help them along in their learning journey. And finally, empowerment. We learned through our remote learning situation in the spring, just the importance of kids really owning their learning and the importance of building those skill sets even at a young age. And we want to continue to foster that, empowering not only our staff, but our students as they matriculate through the system. So our guiding principles are equip and engage. Student and staff wellness will be number one and always number one, and our commitment to equity and inclusion. Just to remind everybody, we have about 40 to 45% of our students are free and reduced lunch. And so that's a very heavy percentage, and something that we have to be mindful of in all of our planning, because everybody's situation at home is not the same. And we want to make sure we are leveling the playing field in any way that we can. And also, I just want to point out, we have thousands of specialized plans that exist in our district, from medical plans to specialized learning plans, English language learner plans, gifted plans. And it's a heavy lift to be able to build those plans and carry them out. And we want to be able to do that with excellence. Grow academic achievement and educational opportunity. I'll reemphasize, we want to be student-centered in our process, and we want to provide quality. We have a diverse population of students who have varied needs, and we want to make sure that we're serving them with excellence. And that is something we're committed to. Embrace innovative learning. these two things often have tension together, but the truth is they belong together. Continuous improvement and innovative practices. We don't want to settle and rest on status quo or where we've always been. We want to be continuous learners and grow, and maybe not do things as we have always done them. We want to have innovative practices that are not just for show, but that make deep impact in the lives of our students. And finally, optimize partnerships and align resources. Our bread and butter in this school district are partnerships. They are absolutely our ticket to success. The way this community and the businesses and our partnerships wrap around us, I think, is second to none. So just a special shout out really to our partners at the ESC, the Clermont County Health Department and the Health Commissioner, just absolutely top-notch partners. Mercy Hospital and Health Source, and the various vendors who have just been going above and beyond to help us to build our infrastructure and our pipeline of all the resources and materials that we're going to need for the fall. So here we are, the educational models that we have as options in the West Clermont School District. We have two options for families. One we call the Flex model option, and the other the West Clermont Online Academy. So those are the only two. Inside of the Flex model option, there's three plans or three possible ways that we could enter into option one. And what I want to be clear about tonight is that the decision for if we're in option one, which is more of a face-to-face, being back in our brick and mortar schools, will be based on me and my team working with the Clermont County Health Department and really understanding the conditions and how the spread is going in our own community, as well as how it's specifically affecting our school district. At this time, the Health Commissioner is working on being able to get the zip code data here for Clermont County, but that's not something that's up and ready yet. And so we just want to keep refining and looking for tools that are going to help us pinpoint and really understand how we directly are impacted. But being such a large part of Clermont County, we know that as the conditions are ripe for spread, that's going to be probably impacting West Clermont School District. And so I want to reiterate here that this is where we're saying families need to be ready to move in between face-to-face instruction, all in 5 days a week, to a possible 50% capacity plan, to remote learning, and not necessarily in a phased approach. You could go right from all in to right to remote learning in a day's notice. And I think that's unsettling. It's unsettling for me to know that something might have to change in a day's notice, but this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where our ability to operate, no matter where the community spread is, if we have an outbreak in one of our schools or something significant in one of our schools that causes us not to be able to function, we don't have the substitutes we need and we're not able, one school in our system might come out and be different and be in a different mode or different option than the rest of our schools. And so that's unsettling to me. It's challenging to me, but that's what I want to prepare you for. I don't want you to be surprised by our need to be flexible. And so I'm sure you're wondering, like, well, how are we going to start the school year? What I've been saying all summer, and I'll continue to say, our intention is to come back to school. So we are fully preparing to get our team on the field, having our students here 5 days a week as our default plan. Like, that will always be what we're aiming and stretching for. But we're not going to do that in a careless way. We're not going to do that in a haphazard way. We're going to do it under the direction of the healthcare professionals that we work with. And in fully understanding our capacity as a school district to carry out the protocols that are recommended and required to be successful. And so I'm going to go into more details about each plan as we move along, but I wanted you just to understand we have two options, and that West Clermont Online Academy option is something that we're asking people to commit to for a week. Because of staffing and because of the cost of curriculum and being able to stabilize and really build that plan, it can't be something where one day you're in, another day you're out, and then you're back in. It has to be a commitment. And so when you sign up for that, and several students have, that's something you would sign up for the semester. And we did have a deadline so that we could get some early numbers to be able to present to you tonight, but we're going to open it up again as another option if people want to get on board as they learn a little bit more about it, feel a little more comfortable, and can sign up. And so I know there's some confusion about, I signed up, or at least I think I signed up. Am I confirmed? we will be having another like layer of information that will kind of do that final, put a bow on it, say you're in, and then you'll start seeing information specifically geared around the West Clermont Online Academy. And we're going to be able to have our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Mike Overby, is going to be overseeing that process. And so we'll be able to kind of shift our hats around a little bit and dedicate some time and investment so that you all will know that it's being led and well taken care of. The Wolfpack Hub is, brought to you by Mr. Jeffrey Ryle and team. He created it this spring as a way to try to have a one-stop shop for all of our families and everything related to COVID-19 remote learning. And so we decided, because we've gotten a lot of quality and positive feedback about it, that we would just continue to enhance it to make it better and get it started for the new school year. So as you go there now, you'll be able to see the return to school details. We have a 4-page kind of overview process of the plan that just can give a snapshot. And then we also have our commonly asked questions that are on there that we'll continue to add to and update as new information comes in. So please take a look at that. The AllIn Plan, that is characterized by being face-to-face with instruction 5 days a week. We'll have what we call this West Clermont Stop the Spread health and safety protocols, and I'm going to go into detail with that a little bit later. And our target in this AllIn Plan is approximately three feet. We are not able to meet the 6 feet social distance plan with all students coming back. And you have to keep in mind that, some students might be absent a day, or we have a chunk of students coming out because they're going to be in the academy. So there will be a different kind of attendance just from those numbers coming out. But because of the shape and size of some of our rooms and just the nature of some of our classes, reaching that 6 foot capability of social distancing is not possible in the AllIn Plan. So this is where, I just want to be responsible and say this is where there is some risk in coming back to school, that just like there is every flu season, like we can't guarantee without a shadow of a doubt that somebody isn't going to get the flu. It happens all throughout the course of the year, and that's how this works. And so everyone knows they're taking on some level of risk in it. We will focus on core academics across the board: literacy, numeracy, which is more of the core math literacy skills, and technology. We want to make sure that our students have the digital tool belt that they need to be able to work face-to-face or pivot to remote if they need to. And we're going to make sure that the standards, the solid core standards that transfer and are important from subject to subject, year to year, are solid. And we're going to have to get really, really focused on that as school gets started. And I just want to point out to everybody in the AllIn Plan that some of our school practices, such as the meals that we serve, how our cultural arts program works, our encores in the middle school, our electives in the high school, after school clubs, those might take on a different version. Some things that might be able to be moved to virtual might be virtual. There might be, there will be social distancing kinds of requirements, and just a different way of going about them. And so I don't want you to be surprised by that we can't, be taking all these precautions during the day, and then as soon as the bell rings, throwing that out the door. And so we'll have to be mindful of that. I will say, for instance, just yesterday, we got word from the Ohio Athletic Association that football scrimmages, soccer, field hockey, and cross country, the contact sports, their scrimmages have been suspended. So again, it's just another example of there are some allowances to allow these practices and these teams to get geared up for the fall, but there's a strong, hard stance of no scrimmages in play. And so that's what I mean by being flexible inside of those kinds of extracurriculars and athletics. Up next, you'll see our 50% capacity plan survey information. And again, we had really good returns on this. I'm not sure you can see the numbers as well on your screen, so I'll just read them to you. 61% of the parents and 59.6% of the staff said that they did want us to invest in a 50% plan. And I want to make I call this the middle, the red plan. Early on, we were contemplating aligning our plans and our educational models with the color coding alert system. But as I started exploring that even deeper with the health department, we just had some concerns about it being the trigger alone, that certainly it can be a piece of information that would be helpful for us, but as a standalone trigger and as an absolute would not serve us best. And so that's why we kind of got rid of that, associating this middle plan with red as a absolute. So anyway, the one thing that I want to make sure that you hear about this is, well, two things. One is we're the only Clermont County school at this point that is contemplating a 50% capacity plan. And so that makes us unique here in West Clermont. And what we're trying to do as a Clermont County is to really come together as a whole system. I've mentioned that to you before. And we want to stay locked in as consistent as we can. But every school district realizes there's unique situations, and our size sometimes just sets us apart and causes us to maybe have to do different things. One of the things I want to point out that you might not be thinking of, because I wasn't even initially in the 50% capacity plan, is the fact that this would cause us to cohort our students. And so when I say cohort our students, that means we'll be dividing them in half so that when students are in our school building, half of them will be there, half of them will not. And so what's the best way to do that? Do we start with the alphabet? Is that the best way? And will that get us that social distance and that division that we're looking for? Or because the alphabet is not, it's just not that simple sometimes because of the breakdown of the letters, would doing it by streets be another way? So right now we're in this process as a team of vetting out, so okay, which cohort model is the best for West Clermont, makes the most sense and help us most efficiently and effectively educate our students. And then secondarily, if you spend all this time working hard to cohort students and keep them separated, then there's not a lot of logic. And then after school, allowing cohort 1 and cohort 2 students to come intermix at a cheerleading practice or at theater or at an after school chess club or whatever, that keeping those cohorts separate are really important. And so a 50% capacity plan really means that we have to take a look at canceling athletics and extracurriculars and those kinds of things. So with that 50% decision comes some heavier other elements that I want to just make sure people are aware of that would have to be considered in the mix. And it's not so simple as to say, well, just let this organization, this club come on cohort 1 and let this club be cohort 2. There's just lots more complications. So if Larry, if you'll go on to the next slide, you'll see in the 50% capacity plan, cohort 1 would come to school on Monday and Tuesday, and then they would be in remote learning Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And for families, we are trying to think of everything that they have to maybe be thinking of. So for instance, maybe a high schooler and their family might need to be there for childcare to provide extra academic support or something. And so we'll want to try to be able to sync up those high school students with their elementary siblings or middle school siblings. And so there's just lots of factors that go into something as challenging as this. The face-to-face days will be when teachers are really investing in the kids that are in front of them. They are not going to be able to be sufficiently available for the students who are at home remote learning. And so it would literally be teachers will face-to-face work with the students and then have activities, practice things that they can go deeper on at home more independently. And then Wednesdays would be a time for it. It's really yet to still be defined in specific manner with the teachers and the principals themselves, but those days would be more professional development, more analysis of students and how they're performing and how we intervene. It could be small group work. It could be calling some kids in for extra support. There could be all kinds of things that then happen on that Wednesday, but it will be a midday of the week, every week, to really dig in and make sure that we're providing the supports, because as I said before, this is not going to be one size fits all. And so doing a standard thing across your entire classroom is not going to be sufficient to close gaps and to grow academic achievement. And this model will be able to have a 6 feet social distance. That's more feasible because that would be our target, which is not what we can do in the AllIn Plan. And what we would do for elementary students is, as I said, we'll be establishing how we're going to cohort them. All elementary students in the same family would be in the same cohort. And our intention would be able to connect that same cohort with the middle school and high school. But because of the complication of the number of classes and the types of classes, it's just not as cut and dry in the middle school and high school to cohort and really achieve the 6-foot distancing that we're actually going for. And so they would be on remote learning. And what we would offer up to families is that if they want to then bring their children to school in a cohort for extra support, those students would come to school. They wouldn't go to like first period and then travel through their schedule in the typical way, but they would have on location support, tutoring, facilitation, extra hands-on support that could be made available. And so that we think that would help us limit the amount of students in middle school and high school. And with all of these plans, I will say, we are going to be developing attendance protocols. There are policies and rules changing inside of the state that then force us to change as to how you define what being present in school means. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more later. Remote Learning 2.0, I add the 2.0 on there to say that we learned a lot in the spring, that we know we must have a higher bar, a higher level of intensity, and different kinds of expectations, because a lot of the things that were hurdles in the spring will be under our belt. The technology infrastructure, for one thing, will be much more robust. Our comfort with the tools will be much more robust, and that need to really connect with our students and provide that social emotional piece and interact with them on a daily basis, not a here's your assignment, go do it kind of way, will be critical. So our rigor will change, our expectations will change of both staff and students. We will use Schoology as our learning platform. And that was one of the pieces of feedback that we got from family along the way, is that having the various learning platforms across the school were hard, especially for multi-age families. And so we want to try to get everybody under one roof. And even though there's a million tools inside of that, just to kind of give a home base that helps people be a little bit more organized and understand the flow of teaching and learning. We will have a system for daily attendance and student engagement. So there's various plans that you can do for remote learning to account for attendance, but it really requires active engagement for our students. It is not, it won't be simple for us to define, but we will come up with some parameters and expect students to participate. And I know that even in the fall or spring, sorry, there were some students that just kind of shut down and didn't participate, and that will not be acceptable in any way in this remote learning 2.0 plan. And then school activities and events, all that will be canceled. And we went to great lengths in the month of May to try to make it the celebration month of the that we're all accustomed to. So we worked really hard to convert those events. We would do a similar effort. I'm not guaranteeing a 100% replication, but we want to make sure that experience, the memories that you create, the benchmarks, those just special milestone kinds of things that happen in a school would still be able to be incorporated in the process in some way, shape, or form if we have to move to remote learning. So I talked earlier about the West Clermont Stop the Spread health and safety protocols. We branded it with that just so that we could not have to say this list over and over. But what I want to emphasize here is this list is important as a list. It's important as a package, because what we're learning from our health professionals is that you have to layer all these interventions on top of each other. And it's the layering of them, and it's the everybody all in this together that actually makes it work. And that's why we're hoping to see a change in all of Clermont County because of the masking that has happened across the community. I've been hearing great things from the health commissioner about people actually following the mandate and end up making a difference. And so the more we can be good with our hygiene and practicing social distancing and staying in our family cohorts and not cross-pollinating, the better we can get our environment safe for students to come back to school. So the first is going to be daily checks for COVID symptoms. That's going to be just, whatever your morning routine is, getting the cereal out, pancakes, whatever you do. And maybe it's your morning coffee, maybe it's exercising, whatever the morning routine of the family is, we need to layer in this COVID-19 symptoms check. And so, what's interesting to me, the symptoms, there's a long list there, from fever, chills to sore throat, vomiting, diarrhea, nausea. I won't go into all the gory details, but that list has grown since since spring. This list has expanded. And so when I read that list, it looks and sounds like every other thing that anybody can have. And so it's extremely difficult. I know we're not all doctors, we're not all medical professionals, but we need to get to know our students and to know what's normal for them, and be leaning in and paying attention to that before we send them off to school. If we, for any reason, need to do those checks, our health clinic aides and nurses will be completely prepared to do that. But that won't be something we're doing massively. Like, as students walk in, we won't be putting a thermometer gun at their head, checking their temperature. We'll expect that the families have done that. And if we see anything or we notice a student has some symptoms, then we will be having that layer happen with our health clinic professional. We'll have enhanced cleaning and sanitation measures. The custodial team has been doing a phenomenal job this summer, not only stockpiling, getting all the materials ready, but just building those routines and building those practices in, and learning to be as efficient as possible. Our director of operations has also been ordering different kinds of equipment to further enhance the cleaning mechanisms that they use. One of the things, I'm afraid I'm going to say it wrong, but it's an electrostatic machine that allows the chemicals to get on the surface in a wraparound fashion and not just on the top. And so it's more pervasive in its efforts to kill germs and to cover spaces. Wearing face coverings over our nose and mouth to protect each other. This is probably the hot button topic of the district. And what was interesting in our surveying is that parents were on one side of the coin on this, in just not valuing the masks and interest in that at all, and just worried about their students being in a mask all day. And the staff was on the total opposite side, where staff really wanted masks. And since the surveying, we have, become a county in red here in Clermont County, and everybody's had to mask to come out into the community. So what I'm seeing is kind of a change of practice and a change in attitude, and then just a change in what's becoming normal. I've seen, 4-year-olds have masks on, 80-year-olds have masks on, 50-year-olds have masks on. Like, it's how we interact in society right now. And as challenging as it sounds to think about having a mask on in a school day all day, we're going to have to build a policy and some practices around it that will allow us to mask as much as possible. And it doesn't mean we want to suffocate children, or that we want to anybody who has breathing problems, that we would say, well, you have to wear a mask anyway. Like, we will work through challenging and unique situations, but it is imperative for our workforce to be able to come back, to know that we are doing everything in our power to mitigate and to stop the spread of the virus. And masking is one of those elements that it's really not about you. It's not about me. It's about the other people. It's about how we're keeping our germs to ourselves and not spreading them. And it's clear across our state that this mitigation is making a difference. And so I know it's highly controversial. I know we have to get a good solid policy in place and a way to be able to support teachers and students in the implementation of this, and just to be reasonable. And so we are working through all of that, and we'll be bringing something to you guys actually next week to consider. Hand washing across our schools. Various rooms have sinks, and so we'll be able to offer soap and water in those kinds of situations. But we'll have hand sanitizer, not only in our classrooms readily available, but in various areas across the school. We'll be safely using water bottles instead of the fountains, and so we are allowing students to bring in those into our schools. And I know that Mr. Perry is even working in as many places as he has been able to provide even some of those fountains that are water bottle fountains to be able to help support that. And social distancing whenever possible. And we know in a school system, and walking through the park, going to any event that, an ice cream parlor, Kings Island, Coney Island, wherever, like, social distancing and kids don't go in the same sentence very well. And that's not lost on us. But we will be doing every effort in our ability to keep that social distancing on the forefront of people's minds. And what I've been learning over the summer from our healthcare professionals is that it is the duration. It's the 10 to 15 minutes inside of that 6 feet social distance, like well into the inner circle next to somebody, with coughing and hacking and those symptoms coming out, that considers you as a contact. The everyday passing by each other or sitting next to somebody in a room does not necessarily mean that you're a contact. And so we will be learning as a system, what does that mean? Have I been 10 to 15 minutes inside of 6 feet distancing to know if I'm a contact or not? And I think we'll learn a new language. We'll learn a new way of describing things in terms of these safety protocols that both our students and our staff will become comfortable with over time. Oh, this is a big one. What happens if a student or a staff member is sick or tests positive for COVID-19? What I want to mention about this is that there has been changing guidance on this literally all summer long. And just something, I'll give one example because it's easy. There for a while, it was students with a fever couldn't return to school until they were 72 hours fever-free without any medication and their symptoms improving. And then now in some documents, it's changed to 24 hours. And so details like that are the things that are consuming our attention right now, as we're trying to make sure that our documents and our guidance are lining up with the best and the latest science and medical professional updates. And so because of early in July getting the state updates and the Ohio Department of Education updates, spending time with those, and then the health department just recently, literally just last week, getting the CDC requirements and Ohio Department of Health and CDC guidelines not quite syncing up exactly in the moment. Our health department is now spending time kind of weeding through all that. And they are preparing guidance for us that will help answer these questions. So although there are answers to these questions on various websites out there, we at this very moment don't know how we will completely handle it in Clermont County. And I don't mean we don't have any idea, it's just we haven't established the Clermont County procedures yet. And it's quite complicated. And I'll pause for a minute to talk about it because this is the sleepless nights. This is the, how are we really going to do this kind of moment when you start to get to the ultimate horror of understanding that people may contract this disease and what that really ends up meaning. So here's for instance that I think I'll just share with you. So a student is in a classroom and they contract COVID. And so because of us following our protocols, having seating arrangements that are set every day, and because we followed the West Clermont Stop the Spread protocols, we're able to contact trace. And that's, if that word isn't familiar to you, that's where you're really looking to say, okay, how many people have come into contact with that student that might be infected, that might be exposed because they've been inside that 10 to 15 minute window, inside that closer than that 6 feet social distancing for a period of time. So who are those people? Well, we learn in that contact tracing moment that it's maybe 8 students in the classroom and the teacher. So now the teacher has to quarantine. Those 6 or 8 students have to quarantine and the COVID student goes away. And in each of those situations, the student with COVID has a certain amount of time that they have to be out of school before they're able to return. And if it would just so happen that another family member in their household would contract COVID-19, then that would start over their timetable of when they would need to stay out. So that's that student. The other students who are in quarantine, maybe they're symptomatic, maybe they're not, maybe they're just fine. So they're able to maybe still continue with class. So who's going to be their teacher? Well, we have a substitute, hopefully we have a substitute if it's not too challenging, that's going to come in and be face-to-face with the students who are remaining in the class. And we have the teacher of the class is home quarantining. Is that teacher sick? We don't know. If the teacher's fine, does she participate with the class? Like, those are the kinds of details that we need to kind of work that we're continuing to talk through. Like, what would this real scenario look like? And so here you have a substitute teacher who is now required to take attendance for the people who are face-to-face in the room, because for safety reasons, fire drills, whatever, you're going to need to know like who's in your room and be able to get them outside. But you're also going to be taking attendance for the people who are still engaging remotely, because they're able to tap into the classroom, keep the learning going because they're not sick, they're just quarantining. And so in that, you're seeing the complications that we'll have as a staff and the many different talents and skills that we're going to be having to embrace and get better at. We'll have to become contact tracers. We will have to be really good at charting the different scenarios for each child and when they can return, and working with the health department to get that release. And so, as you know, it's not the first time I've mentioned that we are resource lean. And so just having the people in place to do those extra steps and just that one scenario that I'm sharing here, it is what we're working through. That's what I call the weeds and the kinds of things that kind of cause us pause. And that's probably a worst case scenario. But if that's multiplied across a building, you could see easily how, if I'm not able to operate the building, that we would have to go into a different kind of learning model for that particular building or maybe multiple buildings. And so I don't share it with you to cause extra anxiety, although it may have, because maybe I shared things you hadn't thought of. I'm not doing it for that reason, but I'm sharing it with you to understand the reality of our interests, our desire to have our students back with us and the importance of educating them. And yet the challenges that we face in implementing the protocols, we certainly have some capabilities to do it, but there are many triggers that start to impact everything going perfectly every day in every way. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because it's important to note that with these challenges also come financial implications. COVID cases is spotted, so then that means additional cleaning protocols that need to happen. And those can be in very, it could be isolated to a room, or it could be multiple rooms across a school. And so just the time, the equipment, the people that it takes to carry those out. And that's just one department that I'm talking of that will create some financial challenges. I've mentioned our subs, and that continues to be a challenge. We do have some strategies for that, and we have some built-in internal plans that we're creating for that. But it's part of the challenge and all the puzzle pieces that we're putting together. So you can see here, and as you know from earlier in the board meeting, we have a new start date for our school. And so what that will afford us is just a little more time to get in here, be in our spaces, really work to maneuver furniture, to play around with real trouble spots. You know, our best people to help us problem solve things are our staff, and they've been away from us for several weeks now. And so having everybody back under the roof, problem solving and working together, because there are businesses that are finding ways to do things. They're doing it every day. Probably many of you, and you're busy, like you live and you learn through all the best practices out there. And we need to be together as a staff to be able to do this. So we're going to start coming back August 20th for the teachers to have plenty of preparation time. And then you can see, we don't mean to be complicated, but there are various start dates for the students based on their age. And it's intentional. It's not random. It's meant to really provide that intentional transition, especially for the students who are brand new to the school or who are brand new to the grade level. And through our web program in the middle school and our link crew program at the high school, it's a specialized thing that we think is very valuable and essential in a regular year, let alone a unique year like this one. The kindergarten and preschools, the tradition here in West Clermont is that we've always been on a staggered start, and that is so that we can divide the class, I think, in thirds and bring people in on a schedule and to really get to know students, to give them a chance to get used to their teacher and their new environment in a smaller kind of way. And so that specific conversation and communication comes out from the principals. And so this August 31st, September 1st gives you kind of a sense of how we'll start, but you'll have to get those more particulars from the principals as time goes on. for the face coverings, and I interchange face coverings and masks a lot. And we are talking about, when I say face coverings and masks, the covering of your nose and your mouth. Face shields will be allowable in here, especially if there's a cause or a reason why a face covering of a mask is not feasible. And we'll be able to work through each student situation individually. As I said, we are working on a district policy that is one that we believe will be attainable for us. You know, having a mask on 24/7 all day long certainly poses some challenges. And I've been trying to get my mask stamina up by wearing it. And, you know, I have to give myself mask breaks. And what we want to be able to do is empower the teachers to be able to help students with those mask breaks when they're in a situation where they are social distance and they're able to do that. But then to have masks and be on the ready when you're sitting side by side with somebody on the school bus, or if you're in a small group learning environment and you have to be in a closer proximity than normal, that you have the mask. And so I fully believe, and mainly because of the experiences I've had with my young nieces and nephews, I think over the summer, is that it takes practice and it takes development, but kids are way more resilient and adaptable than we are, to be honest. And this will become part of the fabric of what school is. And as sad, because, you know, I have some parents who are just, there's a lot of anger in their voices when they're sending emails, and sadness, really, probably, that's coming out like anger of just, that's not how I picture it for my kid. That's not what I want for them. And I get it. Like, we want to see their smiling faces. We want to see their facial expressions. But as I said, the mask and the facial covers is really a symbol of, I care about you, and I'm going to do everything I can to take about you. It's not about me. And so that's a hard life lesson. But this is a chance for us to really to share that and communicate, even with our youngest learners. So stay tuned for this, and just know there will also be an appeal process that can be put in place here that we haven't created all the protocols for yet. But if there is a medical reason, if there is a sensory issue, there can be a myriad of reasons why a facial covering is just not going to work in a particular situation, that we will have an appeal process that will work with our nurses for you to go through. And up next, we have the One to Wolf initiative expanded. And I am just grateful for the federal CARES money that has been given to our district. You can see in round one, we got $1.1 million. Round two, over $400,000. And although they are not going to answer the call on every extra expense that we have, this was certainly not a purchase, a K-12 one-to-one initiative that we were planning. You know, we were going to continue grade level by grade level, and we were expanding slowly. But we know there's no way that going slowly this year is sufficient for our students. And so we are working diligently to make sure that every student has a device that will be working well for them, and that they will be able to have the internet supports that they need as well. So we will be partnering with our community to activate any and all resources to make sure that learning process is as seamless as possible, because working technology is a linchpin to the success of this. So I just think Mr. Parise and his entire team have been working their tails off, acquiring materials, brokering deals, getting devices ready, repairing, cleaning, you name it, they've been doing it. And they've been doing a heck of a job this summer working to expand our infrastructure. I'm going to look back to my notes for I'm going to take a pause for just 1 second to see if there's anything that I wanted to make sure I don't miss. Oh, the one thing I haven't linked it in here anywhere, and I probably should have. The CDC website, there is a plethora of information on there about the return to school. There's even some information in there that is directed toward parents to say, okay, so you're having a hard time deciding if you want to send your kids back to school. Here are some things you can think through. It's overwhelming and there's a lot to read, but I really would encourage you all to get on there and read. One of the things that is just shown throughout the CDC requirements, and especially on the facial coverings, is that COVID-19 spreads mainly from person to person through respiratory droplets, produced when someone coughs or sneezes or sings or shouts. And so it's important to us that we protect and keep our germs to ourselves as much as possible. And there's a little bit of controversy again on the age. And we just have felt strongly as an administrative team that in our elementaries, we don't feel right about half the school having to follow this protocol and the other half not. That it doesn't make sense to be contradictory inside of your own school. That there's just no rationale for that, because the purpose of a mask is to limit these droplets, these respiratory droplets from escaping to the best of our ability. And so again, we look at the mask as a symbol, and we kind of are on board with the governor and the mandate that this is how we mitigate. This is how we layer on interventions: washing our hands, facial covers, social distancing as a package to support and keep everyone healthy. So what I have up next for you is what's been provided for families in our FAQs as well as in our 4-pager. So I'm not going to necessarily read every bullet, but just kind of hit that these have been the core areas of focus for our team over the summer. First and foremost, we know that our students have been involved in trauma, and everyone has the trauma of being jerked out of school and having to like make a new plan in their family. And then there are deeper traumas, things that are situational in families that it's been quite a long time before students have been back in the care of their schools. And sometimes that can be one of the safest or most nurturing places for them, just because of some really hard situations out there in the world that it's just some of our students' realities. And so we're going to put a high premium on social emotional learning. And the minute that they walk in school, we're not going to start testing to know if they know their alphabet, if they can say all their letters, do the math facts. Like, yes, that's going to be important, and we're not going to put that off till January, but we are certainly not going to be probing on that academic side of things until the anxiety has kind of brought down a little bit, the safety net has been established, those relationships and the reconnection have happened. Our academic goals will be in core literacy. And we just want to be clear up front is that field trips are not really going to be a thing this year. There might be some situations that arise that are very aligned to the curriculum, and it's more of a co-curricular kind of field trip that may have to happen. And I use like BPA, the business class, as an example. Like that might be something where an exception or something has to happen. But in general, we're not going to be going to the zoo and doing any kinds of overnight field trips like the Camp Joys or Camp Kern kinds of things like that. That will not be happening. I've already kind of hit the testing and assessment. We will be working hard to really identify those gaps, because as I've said throughout, we can't be one size fits all. We really need to know where students are and work to accelerate growth. We can't look for incremental pieces. We need exponential growth in our students this year. And so we're going to have to get very precise about the gaps and how we're going to go about filling them. Recess will be that we are committing on the elementary playground that the kids in that grade level stay together. So all day we're working hard to make sure that 4th grade stays with 4th grade throughout. So that just limits the contacts that they have, that we're not intermingling them with other grade levels except for what's happening on the bus, the very best of our ability. And that's the way we think we can support contact tracing and just limiting the spread possibilities. We're going to continue to work with the health department on this, just to know like what really are the best practices for masks on and off on the playground. Do you take them off in some cases because you're outside and you're able to do that? What is the putting on and off, the storage? What does that really look like on hot days, on cool days? Like there's just a lot more things to think through on that. And we want to make sure we're covering all those bases. We will be cleaning the equipment out there once a day. Our back to school events will be modified. You're going to see that right away when you hear about, first and foremost, the Clough ribbon cutting and how we go about that. That's probably one of our first kind of flagship events that we are super excited about, because you guys are just going to be so impressed and so grateful for the bright colors, the bright light, and the beautiful job that they have done at Clough. And so we're going to have to modify that because we want to make sure that everybody gets to be a part of it, but not physically all in the same location. But other events, for open house, supply drop off. There will just be different ways we go about it. And the principals will be communicating those details to you. But what you might be ready for is things like dropping medication off. Instead of, before it would just kind of be, come on Tuesday, drop your medication off. It might now be, Mrs. Smith, come schedule an appointment, and this is your time to come into the building to do that. Arrival and dismissal procedures will look different by location. So the principals will be sharing those details that they've really thought through and will continue to think through and modify as time goes on, and we'll share with you in August. Our classrooms, as I said, we will try to maximize space to the best of our ability. We'll, school supply sharing, we will cut down. The equipment, things like a microscope or a calculator or whatever, those kinds of things, we have to be really intentional and careful about. And if we have to use equipment, there will have to be cleaning in between each use. So some real attention to that. We're targeting the 3 feet social distance. And again, that's a target. That is not a guarantee, and that's not perfect. And neither is the 6 feet, but that's the idea that we're shooting for. It depends on the space, and it depends on the class size. And so that's where the teachers will be looking at their class list, working with the principals, and maybe having to move to other spaces or get creative in different ways. And we're going to provide, really the staff or the parents didn't really have issues with this. We're going to make cleaning supplies available. Not as like the main job of students every day, but it's going to be one of those ideas of like take care of your space, take care of your sphere of influence, the circle around you, and everybody has to pitch in, because this is not going to be a job of one custodian in a school. Like, it's going to be all of us working together. Visitors will be very limited in our school system, because we just can't take the traffic. We don't have the manpower to manage a revolving door, and so that will be highly limited. Transportation, we will be sending out again, we're trying not to survey you to the point where you're not even answering our emails anymore. So we're trying to kind of pile up a couple questions that we need answers from you guys to do all at one time. That will let us know if you've made the choice for your child to return to school on a bus, or if you prefer to drive them this school year. And then we'll respond accordingly. We are going to have students wear their face masks or their facial coverings on the bus and have 2 students per seat. The hope and the idea would be that family members would sit together. So if we're even able to, you could even have 3 family members on a bus, because staying as a family unit is fine. It's the intermixing. And so that's why we would ask, even at bus stops, that you're socially distancing at bus stops. Cafeteria procedures will be at half capacity. And so you're going to see spaces being used that are not typically used for food. We will accommodate and carefully plan for our students with food allergies, of course, but there will be adjustments to the menu for grab and go kinds of items. The self-serve that was really going well, and just, I think, an important part of mealtime will have to certainly be shut down at this time and not be part of our educational and cafeteria experience. And students will be having breakfast in the classrooms. I've mentioned several of the enhanced cleaning protocols that have been kind of well thought out and have actually been being in use all summer long, will be continued. And I know when there were some parents saying, the custodians can't even empty the trash in the bathroom on a regular day. How do you think they're going to do all this? And so I can appreciate that, because, as you're coming in as maybe a spectator at a sporting event, or if you're coming in for open house, and there's a lot of details to get to. And what we're saying is we're going to have to come together as a system and support our custodians and support our ground crew and be a part of all of this with them, because they are hardworking people who take very much pride in what they do. And, sometimes that, hey, do you mind coming down the hallway and help me with this thing? It's like we might have to forego those kinds of extra favors that they're usually maybe more than willing to do, so that they can attend to their sanitization planning. And so we're just going to have to interact with each other and just really be mindful of everyone's role and everyone working together. Okay, so for the West Clermont Online Academy. And board members, I haven't even looked over at you a while. Everyone's still hanging in there with me. I know this is a lot of information. This is the first time we're revealing kind of first round numbers when it comes to students interested in the West Clermont Online Academy. And the way you'll see it broken down is our elementaries listed there on the left and the number per elementary. So you see it pretty fairly even in the elementaries when you look at scale and size of the actual space. And then when you look at by grade level, we have it's pretty fairly even in terms of percentages. And so we're grateful that we're going to be able to offer an online opportunity for our students. At this point, it's at 1,058. We expect that as high school students and middle school students maybe learn a little bit more about what we're offering, that those numbers could go up. You know, we're not sure. Maybe other people are just waiting to know, like, what's our curriculum going to be? Give me more information. Those numbers might go up. It's not such a large number that it makes it, I can't think of another word other than easy, because if you think about it, again, we don't have grade level schools. We have neighborhood schools. And so the distribution of these numbers are not nice and neat across the system. And so in order to use West Clermont schools teachers to execute on the online academy, that means going into the schools and plucking one out. And so just by doing pure math, that means that some of the class sizes are going to go up in those areas because it's not going to be an even distribution across the system. So we're going to be very careful about where and how we do that. But you can see just something as simple as, I want an online academy. I don't want to come back face-to-face to school, and the school is trying to respond. And yet there are there are challenges there because we do not have an endless supply. Well, we'll just add a staff member here, a staff member there. Our commitment in passing the levy was to be able to maintain what we currently do. And right now, this is a shift of resources. And so I'm just saying it's not as nice and neat and perfect as anybody would want it to be. And we are proud to do this work. We're excited about this work because we think it has some real potential in our school district, not just as a COVID-19 response, but as a service that could be meaningful for our students over time. But it's just challenging getting it up and started here in the time that we're in. So first of all, I'm just going to hit the key points here so I stay focused. Students must make a commitment for an entire semester to participate. There doesn't have to be a reason at all that they come out at that semester break. There's no exit criteria. It's just if you don't want to continue, you don't have to. But we're not going to be able to put students in it as the year goes on. If you decide, let's just use it for instance, if we would go into remote learning in the middle of September, and then you're wanting to get into the West Clermont Online Academy because you don't want remote learning 2.0, well, that will not be an option. Like, now is going to be your chance to say, I want this dedicated online academy experience for my child. Like, now is the time. Students will move through their curriculum at times that work best for the students. So it won't be synchronous where everybody's doing everything at the same time. It will still work with a family. And we're really expecting that if you've signed up for this, that especially with elementary, that there's a caregiver, a parent, somebody that can be there for daily support. In this programming, there's going to be online tools and also workbook kinds of tools. So it'll be different than what was offered in the spring, and we'll be able to afford teachers being able to work one-on-one with our students to be able to check in and to be able to engage with them in different ways than they were able to last year. There will be attendance procedures that we create for the online academy to account for students as being present, and so that will just take some time for us to do. We'll be bringing that forward to your board very soon so you can approve those attendance procedures. And finally, we're going to open up that application process again, but it'll close shortly after. Like, this is going to be in early August. Like, here's one last chance to get in so that our high school and middle school and all of the elementary principals can do scheduling for the year. Class lists aren't made, schedules aren't made, because this decision has to happen. And so again, I talked earlier about how it's like, well, how do I sign up for something I don't even know all the details about? But this right now is holding up the district moving forward in terms of scheduling everyone else. And so we're trying to keep this rapidly moving, yet cautiously and carefully making sure you have the information you need. There's a lot of question out there about homeschool and why don't I just go to one of these online schools that already exist instead of waiting for West Clermont to figure out how to do this? And I appreciate that question and that pickle. And I think homeschool, it's a very personal decision, and there are lots of reasons why you might do something like that. And so I'm just here to say that we are committed to you. We want our students to be part of the West Clermont community. That learning community is special to us, and we want to see that continue to thrive and grow, and you and your children being a part of that is part of that success for us. But we respect every family's decision. And if it takes a one-on-one phone conversation with you to help you understand the nuances of the programming and why you might do homeschooling versus why you come into the academy or why you choose to go face-to-face, we're willing to help. I started this presentation saying, like, we're not going to be perfect in this, and it's not going to be fabulous out of the gate, but it's going to be a commitment and a quality program that we offer here in West Clermont. It's just, we're going to be learning in this together. And I don't want to present that we don't know what we do or we're doing, because we do. It's just there's lots of elements and pieces that have to come together. We're having to do it in a rapid way. And so I just want to be clear. So West Clermont Online Academy will be rolling out some more FAQs because our curriculum decision is probably 99% there. So you should be seeing some more from us on that very quickly. We'll open up the application process for you to apply, and then we'll start to do those confirmations so that you'll know that you're in and you're set for the year, and then we can begin to assign our staff members to the students. All right, considerations and next steps. I wanted just to make it clear to everyone what's on top of mind and kind of what's the next fire in front of us to be bringing to you as a board and presenting to the families to help them in their decision making. So first is I will continue, my team will continue to follow all the guidance that is provided for us. We will continue to collaborate with all of the area superintendents, health professionals, and any expert who's willing to work with us and help us in our planning and decision making. We are all ears, and we will be seeking your feedback as needed. And again, we want your feedback, but we don't want to overwhelm you with an email and a survey every other day. So we're trying to be very smart and judicious about when we send those out. So be staying in tune for that. We'll be continuing to work with our enrollment for the academy, our staffing, and our curriculum. As I've mentioned, we'll be working on our attendance processes. We want to make sure that it's very clear to families how students will be counted in attendance, no matter what phase or plan that we're in. We'll be bringing a board policy. Our meeting is Monday, so we'll be working here in the next 2 to 3 days to finalize a couple policies related to coming back to school that we'll need the board to do a first reading of at the August 3rd meeting, and then a final review and vote on several weeks later. There is a remote learning school designation process that is new this year with ODE. So we are working on that. That'll be another thing that we bring forward to the board for final approval. And this will be posted on the Ohio Department of Education website. Our new treasurer is going to be coming and joining us in August. And so we will be continuing to work through our financial analysis and making sure that we're capitalizing on all of our human resources as we work through with each staff member. I mean, we certainly have, I think when I did the numbers earlier this week, we have about, if you look at the age group of staff that are in that new group of at-risk because of the summer extracurricular activities, we kind of have a 20 to 30-year-old kind of uptick of cases in our midst. And then you have the at-risk group of the 50 and older that have been kind of targeted all along. When you look at our staff, about 53% of our staff fall into one of those categories of that 20 to 30 or the 50 and beyond. And so inside of our staff, we have some unique cases, some students who are some staff who are compromised. And so we'll be working through with each of them on their return plan and what we can do to mitigate. So again, that is it's a time intensive, one staff member at a time, and our commitment is there to be there for them, to help support them and help them feel safe and comforted as they're coming back to the workplace. We'll have to maximize staff. I talked about contact tracing. I talked about attendance. I talked about being able to just keep track of how many people are in and out of the classroom or out of the school for a while. that will take people shifting some hats for new hats and cross training and just different things. And of course, we do that kind of thing all the time. It's just, this is just in a more intense way. Larry, can you go back just 1 second, Mr. Priest? I'm afraid I forgot something at the bottom. Oh, and finally, we're continuing to update our guidance documents for you as families, and we'll continue to put those on the Wolfpack Hub. And we're creating a playbook for our staff so that they will have on the ready the decisions that we've worked through all summer, the mitigating things that we're doing to improve and create a safe learning environment. Thanks. Communication. Expect to hear from us on July 30th, August 15th, and August 30th as the predictable. You will definitely get something from West Clermont on those dates. And you will start to see the principals pick up their weekly communication rhythm with you that they do near the end of each week. And so you are going to get some communication from us. You will continue to get that. I know many of you are saying, I started this saying that we are at this moment, we are going with the AllIn 5 days a week as our default plan. I believe by about August 15th, we'll have seen kind of where Clermont County is going. Are we getting worse? Are we getting better? Is the spread getting contained, or are there more cases out there as families are taking more, trips to some of these states that are high risk states and then coming back? So we just kind of have to, the health commissioner and I have to just continue to kind of monitor that to know how might we need to start. So it's my prediction and my sense here is that we're going to be able to have a stronger sense of where we're going to be August 15th. But our default, as I said, will always be to come back 5 days a week. So in all of this, it's easy with the tension of a virus and the tension of another public health crisis of staying after school to kind of forget our purpose. And so I just want to say, why are we here? Why are we here? And we're here for every student. We're here to make sure that they get connected to a learning community that supports them, that builds them up and creates amazing opportunities for them as they work through our school system, that they feel like they belong to something, that they're a wolf, that they're connected to something bigger, and that they have all this potential to reach their future aspirations. We're here to commit to excellence with every student, every learner, every day, every way. That's why we make the decisions we make. This is probably one of the heaviest, hardest jobs we've ever had as educators. And it's our hearts and our head and our hands all needing to work together to help us be successful in this. And it's about us coming together as a community. We're better together. And we're going to, I believe that you can't go wrong when you're committed to doing what's best for students. You keep that as your central focus at all costs. We don't work on adult conveniences and what works for adults, that we think about what is best for students in every shape or form. We're going to have a good outcome, because when we do that, we're keeping our number one best resources at the forefront of our decision making. And I didn't say that to mean that adults don't matter. I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying the core of our business is our children, and we're going to continue to dedicate to serve them well in whatever way, shape, or form we do that. And our job as educators had to certainly expand over the course of the American education system. I mean, we are way more than an educational program and a place for students to be safe. We are way more than that. But at this time in our history, we have to prioritize those two things: safety and education. Those are our number one responsibilities. Everything else is extra. And so we're going to keep students at the center. We're going to continue to work together and commit to, Larry, you can go ahead and turn the slide. Our commitment, we're going to be responsive. We're going to communicate with you. These plans, and I just want, this is like not my disclaimer, but it's just something I want to emphasize. We will continue to re-examine them. I'm not sitting here telling you today, this is the perfect foolproof plan, but it has features and foolproof effort and we have been thinking through scenario and obstacle and looking at mitigating or ways to mitigate in every way, shape, or form. I commit to you that. And we are working to deal with the changing information and conditions. A lot of times the health officials are not even knowing that changes are happening. They're finding out the minute we're finding out. And so there's just always this trickle down response. So I'm saying that We're not being casual about that. We're leaning in, we're networking with the right people, we're staying on top of it and responding accordingly. And we are going to take the recommendations of the public health professionals into account for everything that we do. We are not going to claim to be epidemiologists, medical professionals. We are going to stay in our lane as district leaders of the school district, committed to serving your children well. So, Board of Education, I want to submit to you, this is our array of options for our return to school plan. And I'm asking that you approve the resolution provided for you in the agenda as presented. And we'll turn it over for questions. And Mrs. Brinkman.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion for a second.
Second.
Was that Mr. Stapp? Mr. Stapp?
Yes.
Perfect. Discussion?
I might have a question or 10.
Maybe. I'm ready.
So some of these questions are clarifying, and then some are just asking for information. So I'll start with my clarifying questions real quick.
Right.
You mentioned the state color coding map. That's not going to be our basis for which plan we move into in option 1. That'll be part of our decision making, but that won't be the end all be all. So if Clermont's still in red, that doesn't mean that we're going to go to 50-50.
Yeah, the health commissioner has made it clear to me that even in red, we could come to school using the West Clermont safety protocols. We have to be able to stand behind those. We have to be able to execute. We have to be able to operate. But with the plans that we've been discussing with her and what we have in mind, we could still be in school in red. It's not a deal breaker for coming to school face-to-face 5 days a week. It does mean in the community there's more spread, there's risk in all of this, but it's not impossible. It's not a deal breaker. Okay,
very good. Regarding masks and face coverings, this is again clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
All students pre-K through 12 will be required to wear masks.
Yes, all students and staff.
All students, staff, anybody in the building. That we will be offering opportunities for them to have breaks from wearing their mask, whether they're outside or in an area where it's just them or whatever. And that if someone's individual condition prevents them from wearing a mask, we will work with that and do all of that. Correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. You had mentioned that based on zip code data or other data that might be forthcoming, that there could be some buildings in the district that might be all in while another building is in a 50-50 plan. Is that accurate? Or, that's just the note I took, and I just want to make sure I took that note.
Yeah, I know. This is the part that I probably dislike the most is just the wrapping my mind around the reality of that. But if you really are paying attention to the data and you're paying attention to what's happening, we could have a school that, because we're not able to get subs and we've kind of ran out of our supply, and they have not enough teachers to be able to be there face to face and keep everybody social distance. Let me just give this example. I think this will help illustrate just the challenges that we face in a regular school year that will help explain. So if David Fultz was here, he could be very precise. I'm going to have to be kind of generic. Subs in our school system and having them on a regular basis is challenging on a daily basis. 100% of the time it's challenging. There's some days that it's easy breezy, but it's normally challenging on everyday basis. In fact, sometimes I'll be calling a principal and they'll text me, "Hey, Natasha, I can't talk to you right now because I'm covering a class." And this means, during the school day, a teacher had, their child is sick or had to go to the whatever, so they have to leave the building. So we are left with, if we're not able to pull a sub from our sub pool into the school system to cover for like the half of the day or whatever, that means we have to internally cover it. So that can mean a principal goes in there. It could also mean, if it's like a period or two, a default answer on a daily basis in our district, which is, it blows my mind, but it's what happens. Teacher A then teams up with teacher B and they just combine classes. And that's how they make it through, is that now you have 2 classes layered on top of each other. Well, that is not a practice that makes any sense when you talk about any of these factors that we need to do under the West Clermont Stop the Spread. That's just asking for problems. So might you be able to take your class down to the gym and spread out if there isn't PE there that day? Okay, that might maybe work once, twice, like you might get lucky, but that's not an answer. So if we would be in a situation where there's illness across the school, or we know that teachers are going to be out for whatever reason it might be, maybe somebody's having a baby and somebody else is, who knows, whatever the reasons are. It only takes 3 or 4 people in an elementary to not be able to be there, and us not to be able to get coverage, to keep our operation, to put our operations at a really rough place. So does that mean you might see people from district office having to go in and support buildings? Yes. And that might not be enough at times. And so, I'm probably sounding anxious when I talk about it, because I just start thinking like, how do you keep track of all this stuff? But it's, that could be true in a building, and then we just go problem solve that building. We work through that in that particular case. And so that's where I see a unique thing could happen, or a widespread, the virus could spread throughout a school, and that would make them uniquely different, and other schools can be up and running. And so as much as I wouldn't want everybody to be on a different page, I'm just saying I could predict that it could happen.
Right.
Mrs. Adams, I
So-
have a question related to that before you go to the next question, Mr. Schaff.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Bringman, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry. I have a question related to Mr. Schaff's question. So let's say that you've decided to take one of the buildings offline. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is related to Mr. Schaff's, that if you have a building that you've taken offline, what about the students that are maybe older siblings at the middle school or high school that have committed to the 5-day in-person education? Will we be flexible enough to allow them to also be at home to help with, coverage, or help with the homeschool education while that building is offline?
That's a great question, because we're talking about real needs and being responsive. And so I think, I would love to say that we don't all have to be on different places, and that this will just be clean, and it'll be either all in or all out, and it's just clean and simple in that way. Nothing about this is simple, but I think we'd have to work with families, and it would be situational. I don't think it's easy to have a black and white response at this moment. I need to spend some more time just thinking about just the impact, like the trickle down to all the buildings and the impact on families. It's not that we haven't thought about it. It's just, this is what happens when you start playing scenarios. You can go off into many different webs of challenge. And what we're going to do is there's a new policy that you guys are going to be approving that is specific about attendance. And it provides a little more flexibility for us to define attendance in different ways. And so I would imagine inside of that policy, we're going to be able to help define this a little bit better. And that's what I'll spend some time here in the next day or so, because our goal, of course, is not to penalize, but we also don't want to just know that people are out there not doing anything, not doing school, and we're losing them. That feels like life or death to me in a whole other way. And so I think attendance policy can certainly shape our behavior and our actions. And so we'll spend some time on that as a team and with the board.
So, and that was going to lead, all of that was leading me into my next question. And you kind of touched on this when you were talking about contact tracing, where you might have a teacher who was in contact with somebody, but now has to self-isolate or quarantine. They're fine, same with the students, they're fine, but because of being in contact, they need to isolate for a short time. And you kind of touched on that, and this was going to be my question. Are those students and staff going to be able to utilize remote learning and not have to just miss 3 or 4 days while we're waiting to see if, they become symptomatic or they have tests waiting to get results back? Are we going to be utilizing remote learning in those instances when, someone's fine, but we're just waiting or whatnot? Do you see what I mean?
No, I do. And so there's certainly, it's hard to answer in such like a crystal clear way that this will happen 100% of the time with every case, because, the challenge of I'm meeting with my class face to face and we're doing certain things. And yet I'm trying to build that experience inside of my Schoology learning management system so that it can be
Sure.
replicated out there. But it's never like a perfect match. And so certainly could they stay up and I've had, my own children, when they've been absent, they've been able to get on Schoology, find out what was happening that day and kind of get caught up. So it's like a little sneak peek into the school day that they've missed. So certainly those kinds of things can happen. That ability to synchronize and everybody being on Zoom and staying all completely together, I think, I can't say it would never happen, but I'm not sure it would be always likely to happen.
Right.
And really with the staffing issue, that's one of the things we're still working out, because you don't want to count teachers out when they are quarantined, but there might be some real reasons why they can't keep performing their duties. And so I really believe that would be situational, and that we'd have to work through that. But it's a great question, and it's part of the things that I think it's the frustrating thing for not only us, you guys, the parents, the staff, is that there's not a black and white answer for every situation. There are answers, and it just depends on the conditions around those problems.
Very good. So now I'm going to go into my other questions that kind of aren't more clarifying. The high schools had a virtual academy, and I don't know that it was renamed something, and I don't recall that off the top of my head. But how does the WCOA interact or take the place of, or whatever, the high school, the virtual academy for students, who are falling behind, or, just for whatever reason, just can't handle the in-school experience in general? Are we still doing that program, or is that kind of rolling into the online academy?
It wouldn't be rolling in, but it's a great question. That is to serve a very specific and unique need of a student. It's also to serve credit recovery, students who are getting in a hole when it comes to credits and being able to move out of credit deficiency. And so that has a specific need and kind of way of doing business. And it's a lot about catch up and doing things differently. The curriculum that we are purchasing for the online academy is certainly similar to the curriculum that we have for the current program, but we've never had anything that is elementary all the way through high school. And so we're wanting to have a consistent program that spans all those grades, and that is supported differently by a teacher. Because in the academy, or sorry, it's not the academy, in the virtual, they're working like one-on-one. This will be a whole class of kids working through the programming. So it's just slightly different in how you instruct and how you support working through, because everyone's following a similar curriculum versus being in a million different places based on their credit deficiencies.
And then now our West Clermont Online Academy, is this something that we're planning to continue long-term? Are we thinking this is only for this year or next year or however long we're in this condition? Is this something that might be an option moving forward, even beyond, for the next 5-10 years, something that, this is now our second high school, our eighth elementary, second middle school type of thing?
Right. I think that's a great question. We've talked a lot about in our strategic plan that whole idea of innovative learning and opening up opportunities for students. A lot of our current WC Your Future kind of programming, specifically in the high school, is something that happens after hours. It's a after school experience with the Explorer programs, or an internship that happens after 2:15. We see potential in online learning as a way to use time differently. And maybe we can bring more of these real life experiences into the school through a blended approach of some online, some face-to-face. And can we open up different kinds of opportunities for kids this way? Some of our middle schoolers are not functioning well in a middle school environment, in the size of our middle school, and just going through puberty and the challenges of what it means to be 13 years old. Having some more opportunity for them in different ways and strategies, and not an all or nothing. Like this may end up being a continuum of not all day in face-to-face or all day out, but maybe there's some combination that is just the right mix that we haven't had at our fingertips before. And maybe in elementary, there's some similar situations. You know, the social, emotional, mental health of our students in our world today is like no other. And imagine, you know, following a COVID crisis and multiple years of kind of coming through that, what that might do. And so I think as educators, it's important for us to explore this and not look at this as like a Band-Aid one and done, but to say, what potential is here? Because I will tell you, as many bad stories as I heard about remote learning in the spring, I heard good stories. I heard stories of kids who really started to thrive. Their voice was heard because they came to class in a different way. And so to me, there's excitement and there's possibility here. And we just have to be more, like, it just can't be one and done. I think we got to continue to look at a continuum of services for our students. Yet, and I will say this, we have to be mindful of our resources. We can't be all things to all people, but it doesn't mean it's all the same is best either. Like just looking at serving students well.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that, because all the time and money and investment and resources that we're putting into this, and I'd like hopefully to see this become part of our part of West Clermont. And like you said, it's more about innovation as well, and you know, being able to offer different opportunities and reach other students that may not be reachable because of whatever reason. My next question deals with the gifted program. Is that going to be on hold? Are we going to still be able to offer that for our 4th and 5th graders where they go to the high school or whatever like that?
Yeah, we plan on still offering it. I know they are working, I can't remember all the details right now for the specifics of exactly how they were going to break down the groups, because we were looking at just trying to limit the interactions from the multiple schools. And so I know they were playing with the schedule, because we certainly wanted them to be able to continue to come. We also looked at models of teachers deploying out to them. And so I just don't know exactly where they've landed on that to be able to speak specifically to it. So what I can do is I know there's some FAQs about it, but I'll bring more data at our next board meeting just to go into it a little bit deeper. But our intention is to continue the face-to-face program to the best of our ability. And then anytime we would go remote, if that was necessitated. And it's likely that it will be, regardless of where we start school. It's likely we'll be moving into remote at some point, that would be planned and supported and given to them virtually. It's very important
good
for us to keep that going. Yes.
Yeah. And then maybe, thankfully, my last question, how is the Wolves Wellness Center going to participate in, I guess, our district? I mean, I know that there's still, you know, the need for parents to sign up and all that, but is the Wolves Wellness Center going to be available for supporting our health and health staff in the schools? Or are they going to be able to offer any kind of testing? Are they, you know, how is the Wolf Wellness Center going to play a role here this year?
Okay. You know, I'm waiting for Mr. Overby to send me some more texts right now to tell me some of the details. He's just been working with Health Source and kind of planning what that's going to look like and how they might serve us, and we work together. how we need to look at the protocols for the van differently. And we're in the process of looking about how inside of each of our schools, how do we have a clinic that's more COVID symptoms related? And how do you have one that is just for, what do teachers do now? Like, can you just handle a bump or a scrape in your classroom now because you have Band-Aids available to you versus sending somebody to the health center when they don't really need to? Or if it's somebody coming for their medication. So we're trying to figure like, how can we separate those spaces out to the best of our ability? And I don't have a full rundown on all those specifics. I just know Mike has been doing some planning. So that's another thing that he might send something here over the text that might be helpful to me in the moment. But otherwise, we'll build that. Some of the health specific protocols, we'll build that into the August 3rd presentation that just gives a little more detail, because certainly Health Source is great partners with us. I just don't know where it's all landed. Now, I will say, I got word here. We have 4th and 5th grade. This is back to the gifted, Mr. Schaff, for just a second. They're only going to come from one school one day at a time, and that's kind of what we worked through, is to try is just to try not to mix schools, and so that would be a different practice, and so then there would be a rotation that was built from that. So it'd be slightly a shift, but it would certainly allow them to continue their practice of coming to the high school. And again, I'm looking here at some updates from Mike. What's going to be happening with Health Source for sure is that they'll be continuing to accept appointments. It's not going to shut down in any way, shape, or form. We'll just be looking at how we do those practices. So again, I'll provide a little deeper dive with that at our next board meeting next week.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else with questions?
Mrs. Adams, I know you mentioned limiting visitors to the buildings. What about the college and armed services recruiters at the high school? Will they be able to come in?
Were you talking about student? You got jumbled up a little bit. Were you talking about like student teachers?
No, recruiters from colleges and the armed forces.
Mm-hmm.
Don't they come in and meet with students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will be looking at certain roles like that. Our child-focused people, student teachers working with the college, or people who are coming and doing practicums. Those kinds of visitors will have more of a status of like a staff member, versus just like normally the practice now is parents can come for lunch with their students, and there's just a little more casual come and go of volunteers. I'm not saying we're casual about it, like we don't track it, but it's just more, you have people in and out of the building all the time. We're saying we need to shut that down. So I would imagine, especially at the high school with recruiters and, with Linda Mijas and her lunch and learns, and we bring in employers sometimes to do recruiting for jobs for our students. We might have to look at some of those being done virtually or differently and kind of work through it. So I don't have a black and white, like, no, they're not allowed, but certain kinds of volunteers would be what we'd call our partners and people that we work up on a regular basis. And then there's what you call a visitor. So if you're part of if you're part of us as it is, you're a partner, and we'll be able to set a certain designation, and you would follow the same protocols as our staff follows. And then where we can be creative and do virtual things, we will. And just here's one example. Mr. Overby's working hard right now with ReadyFest. As you know, it's a huge need in our community to provide school supplies for students and help them get certain school supplies or clothing or whatever they might need to help them feel fresh and ready for school. And they're already working on a virtual process for that. A sign up that's much like the system that we've used for our Wolfpack Pantry. And then we'll have special deliveries to those families in their classrooms. And so again, when put to the test, when push comes to shove, our community partners are really creative in creating workarounds and just throwing their hands up in the air and saying, well, we can't do this. Where there's a will, there's a way. So it's been very impressive.
Okay, thank you.
And what I'm also seeing here, our college visits, I would imagine what I'm noticing that's happening in colleges across the area is that they're shutting down face-to-face classrooms. They're limiting them. Like, they're having kids come in for lab classes, but if they can make their courses remote, they are. and you're starting to see sports shutting down in college areas. So I would imagine that the college recruiters and the people that we work with there are going to be changing their practices and probably coming more virtual than they would be face-to-face. And so we certainly don't want to say those opportunities are going to be shut down. They're just going to be different.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, item 2.04 is superintendent committees, and I don't believe we've really had any committees. I know we have, we're going to have to be getting the policy team here together very soon because we have about 4 or 5 policies we'll be bringing to your attention in a rapid fire way starting August 3rd. And I just don't know, do any of you have any comments or any things you want to say from a committee standpoint?
Nope.
The only thing I would like to say, Natasha, is I'm going to reach out to May Hanna, who is our Oaks rep, to see if she maybe has an update for us as to what the Oaks are doing to prepare for the beginning of the school, just to get an update from her.
Okay, that's a great idea. Do you want to see if she can come in on Zoom and maybe be with us for the August 3rd meeting?
That would be fantastic. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
She might be willing to do that. I don't know how many meetings they've had over the summer, but I'm sure they've been, you know, working on things just like us. So.
Yep. Harry Snyder is very good about communicating. And even if they're not getting together in person, I'm sure that there's a lot of flow of communication going out to the board members. So they're very informed of what's going on.
Yes.
So I'll reach out to her if you don't mind.
No, that's
and
great.
Invite her to the meeting. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
And you know, a shout out to Harry, speaking of Great Oaks, because just imagine the challenges of our school system, a large school system, and everything that I've kind of shared with you today about what's causing us to not sleep at night. Being able to work with all those different schools has got to be an extra challenge for him. But he's a great leader and steady in his approach. All right, so for me, my final comment, I think I've commented a lot. I don't think I have any more to say other than I just appreciate the time that everyone has tuned in tonight. I don't know the numbers. I don't know how many people have gotten on, but I hope the numbers are large and that people are getting a sense. You know, like when I met with the staff yesterday, I got some feedback to say, well, you didn't really help us feel better. And then some people are like, well, no, you absolutely helped us feel better just by hearing your voice, talking about it, kind of talking through, helping us understand that you're thinking through X, Y, and Z is comforting. And I hope that's true for all of you. And I hope that's true for our families. Because as I said, I will continue to share information with you. I just am not going to always have all the answers, but I'm going to be a researcher. I'm going to be a networker, and I'm going to be the person that's going to vet the decisions that we make to keep our children safe. And so that's what we commit to. And it's very important for us to get our kids back. And we don't want to lose sight of that. So thank you all for your attention, and we appreciate it.
Perfect. Mr. Parise just mentioned that we have 191 guests on the Zoom meeting tonight. So that's a great number. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we just got another report that it spiked up to 250.
Nice.
Earlier. Got it. So that was when we first began, I guess, and then it dropped a little bit.
Okay.
So looking at the agenda, we do not have board comments on the agenda tonight, so we will not be taking them from us. And we're going to move directly into adjournment. Anyone want to make a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy?
Second.
Mr. Chumley, a second. Roll call.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Motion approved. Our next board meeting will be on Monday, August the 3rd. And I would anticipate that we will be doing it again remotely as we did tonight. Thanks for joining us this evening, and have a good evening. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Kelly.
Thank you.
I'm glad we have one last meeting.